not recording on Friday. So this document came from my CPA examination review materials. This one particular document came from the auditing review book. So most of what's in the right-hand column, sample test of control procedures, aren't going to be applicable for this class. But I really like the way that this textbook broke out the different accounting processes that we've been working through, the department, the sub-process, and then the different controls that relate to that process. So here we've got the ordering process, and some of these we've talked about. These are big ones that we've talked about in class, the pre-numbering, so that you can make sure everything is in place, the credit checks, specifically the authorizations, and then it goes on for each of the different processes. And then, so there's the sale. I like this little notation here where it says segregation of duties. Because it's not enough to, it is, if you can remember that, oh, we should really not have the same people doing that same job, that's pretty good. But here's the different functions. And remember on the past test, the first test, we talked about how these are the three types of activities: authorization, record keeping, and custody. And these are examples of those activities within the sales process. So you don't want the same person receiving the sales order and billing the accounts receivable, because why? Why would you not want, why would you want a segregation of the sales order clerk and the accounts receivable clerk? Exactly, exactly. They could either make up fictitious sales, or they could underbill or overbill, or buy themselves stuff as a fake customer and have the company pay for it. And the process goes, you've got all of the different processes that we'll cover in this class, in this document. On this exam, we'll be talking about block 1, which is the sales process. Block 2, which is the cash receipts process. And we don't have a specific one for payroll, but it's similar to this process in block 4. And it's just a little bit more narrow in focus in that the customer you're creating payables for, or the supplier that you're creating payables for is your own employee, and the supplier that you're paying with cash is your own employee. So the difference here would be, instead of voucher, it'd be receive a paid slip. Instead of, and that would really be the only difference. The starting process is a time card or a record of hours worked instead of a payment voucher. Any questions about that? No, we haven't done the purchasing process yet. We haven't really done the payables process yet. We've done the payroll process. But one of the points I made in the lecture is that the payroll process is the same as the payment process. It's just a specific supplier that you're dealing with, your internal employees. Any questions about this document? So this is a good, I've given this one to my advanced audit class because it's a good shortcut for the different internal controls, as well as the flip side. I always like to say that accounting systems is the flip side of the auditing coin, because on one hand, you're setting up the controls and you have to know what they are. On the audit side, you're testing them. So this is a good reference document for when you get to, for those of you who are accounting majors, when you get to Dr. Richardson's auditing class and move over to the testing side of things. And I will, for those of you online, if I haven't already posted it to Moodle, I'll do it. So let me do it right now. All right. All right, so for those of you attending class remotely today, and for those of you sitting in front of me as well, some people like paper copies of documents, some people like digital copies of documents, but the electronic version of that document that we were just looking at with the controls and the test of controls, I uploaded it to Moodle under Assessing Your Understanding exam number 2. And it's this document here, controls and tests of controls. Any questions before we run through a sample of what your exam might look like? That's my. So we're going to now, for those of you following along remotely, we're going to now work through this PDF document here, exam 2 review activity. And let's see if I can get that. There we go. Oh, it's actually right side up. That's exciting. I do that so infrequently. So oh, and since that opened in a, are y'all able to see it's 15.5 Arlington Industries? Is that what I'm showing on the screen right now? Those attending remotely?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so take a minute to read through this dialogue here. And I'm going to attempt to pull the document up on my iPad so I can see how technologically inept I am. Oh, no. All right. Oh yeah, the second page of the document is the process flow diagram. For what type of process did you infer from the reading? Yep, it's the payroll and HR process, exactly. And someone tell me, one more thing, and then I'll abort this mission. All right. Never mind. So yes, it's the payroll process. Stop it. It is the payroll process, yes. So what are some of the inputs to this process? Let's start there. We've determined that this is a flow chart for the payroll process. What are some of the inputs for the payroll process? The time cards, yes. And where do those appear to enter the process? Here, right? Employee time cards. Yep. What other inputs do we have? The authorization form, yep. And who remembers what purpose the authorization form serves? It's not that, well, it is a control. Documents become a part of the control process. Yeah, we're adding new employees here. We're hiring people. They're filling out all of those first day of work documents that you're glad you only have to do them once. Things like your payroll withholdings, your benefits information, my personal favorite, the direct deposit information. So that way I don't have to deal with paper checks here it's every month, but other jobs I've had, it's been twice a month or every 2 weeks. All of those documents are part of this authorization form. And then the formal finalized form goes to the HR department. Do we see any other inputs here? Yep, the monthly update for the payroll tax. And how is that? So that's an input. It's also an example of, well, it's a process and an input. What's happening with what are we doing with the payroll tax information? Yep. Yep, one of the steps in the process that we talked about for the payroll process was making sure that all of the withholding information is correct. And that's what we're doing here. We're utilizing, what does this oval shape represent here? It's actually a start of, or it's a beginning or an ending. So this denotes that something is coming. This is an origin of the payroll tax service. And I think one of the steps talks about how, yeah, a local accounting firm provides our company with monthly payroll tax updates, which are used to modify the tax rates. What's that? How is that a control, an example of a control? Having someone else do the job for you. Definitely a segregation of duties. You're taking it outside of your company's sphere of influence. So there's a much lower probability that they're going to manipulate it for their own benefits. It also takes out some of the errors because they're feeding us this monthly update that automatically goes to the computer, the payroll master file here. And the less we as humans have to touch things, the better. So I believe those were all of the inputs. What are some of the outputs of this process? I see 3 of them, it looks like. Yeah, database backup, that's one of the, I'm calling it an output per se, because it's the end process and it's the end process. What's another output from this process? Exactly. And one of the items under the prompt is identify and describe at least 3 weaknesses in their process. What's wrong with, I guess it's not wrong because it's showing the process here, but what should be below? I guess, is that I'm not asking that right, but I think this should be another one of those pill shaped. Yeah, although, because this is denoting a manual activity, which is true. Handing out paychecks to employees is a manual activity, but you might want one at the bottom that shows employee in the pill shaped box here that shows that's where the process ends. So what's the third output of this process? Anyone online have a guess? What's the third? So we've talked about paychecks as one of the outputs of the process. We've talked about the database backup so that all of your accounting information is stored in its entirety and completeness. And what's the third output of this process? Yeah, exactly. We're updating the general ledger, just like we've been doing in our systems understanding aid, the end process, number 3. So the third output generated is the entries within the general ledger. All right. Any questions about that? So let's do under item B, under required item B, identify these two different areas in their payroll processing system where controls are satisfactory. So let's identify some of the controls that are embedded in this process. We talked about using an external provider to deal with the tax rates and having those tax rates automatically feed into our database system. Where else do we see controls embedded in this process? Where is that one? Julian. Okay, which bullet on the prompt? Okay. Yep. So it doesn't show up on the flow diagram, but Julian pointed out that the system automatically assigns a sequential number to each payroll check. Why is the sequential number an important control? Yep, it prevents, yep, it allows you to keep track of what's been done and what has not been done. So when you're able to see all of the numbers in a sequence, and that's true of invoices for the sales and cash receipts process, receiving reports in the sales and cash receipts process, if you're getting the items back, the bills of lading, things like that, it allows you to see what documents have been issued, whether any documents have been issued in duplicate, and whether any documents are skipped. So if you were working through paychecks number 1500 to 1512, and then all of a sudden you see a payroll check for 1642, that would cue you that something is amiss. So there's a couple of different controls described in this bullet too. What else? Is that in? Okay, yep, that's an example of, this is what I was hoping to get my iPad up. I was gonna draw on the screen for you, but actually. Okay, maybe I can, hold on. I have the expensive version of Adobe Acrobat, so I should be able to mark up this document. So yeah, this was the item that Julian discussed. The system automatically assigns a sequential number. And then, was this the review time cards for accuracy? Miranda, is that the step you were talking about?
That one and then the payroll.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So let's talk about, we already talked about using an outside source and having that feed into the database automatically. Let's talk about this. What type of control is this? Does the payroll register match the time cards? It's yeah, matching or verification. I would accept either one. And what purpose does that control serve?
Somebody not adding extra hours or paying people more money.
Yeah.
They want,
Yep,
or less.
yep, exactly. It's a verification. It's a managerial review. It ensures that what the employee says they worked is what they're being paid for. Now let's talk about this one. It's similar, very similar. Review time cards for accuracy. How is that what type of control is that? Yeah, it's a supervisory review. It also serves the purpose of verification. Do we see any other examples of control? I guess we can call that one a control too. Reviewing the weekly payroll register on the monitor. So on your exam, you're going to see something similar to this. And I'm going to embed, or I did embed, multiple examples of control, like 5 or 6, I think I put on there because I'm an auditor and that's how my brain works. But I'm going to give you a set number of controls to identify. So that way you're not racking your brain in a limited time period to try to find all of them like a scavenger hunt. So again, I'll have you identify and describe, no, this is this process, the internal controls. So there are a couple other controls that jumped out on me when I was reading the narrative. Let's see, does anyone have any ideas? That's a huge company, 1,000 workers for 3 different shifts. Yep, we talked about this one. For manual check writing processes, the manager uses a stamp. So that's kept locked in a safe with limited access. And that's what type of a control is that? That's an example of a physical access control. By keeping the signature plate locked in a safe, you're limiting access to that stamp. You're gonna have examples of the control procedures on this document that I just handed out or just uploaded to. So that would be, let me see, OER. Let me share a different screen. So under Moodle, under topic 5 and topic 6, take a look at these 2 textbook chapters that I gave you as reference. And let's see if this will pull up. The Romney-Steinbart one. That's the textbook that I use with my grad students. So another good spot to find that information. The lectures I gave you talked about the threat, so what could go wrong, and then the controls. And that talks about the different, what they mean. So you've got access controls, you've got managerial, data processing integrity, things like that. The narrative talks about what type of control it is. Yeah, the actual text in the other place, I think it was under topic 3, where we talk about somewhere in here. Must be down here. Okay, so here's the lecture, the overview lecture that I did on internal controls. It's under topic 4, and it's the internal control video and the internal control lecture that we did. That wasn't my best lecture, so probably the internal control video is a better reference. But that's I'll send out the solution to those 2 prompts on this activity that we've been working through. So you have that as you study, but that's what I'm going to have you do on the exam. Tell me about the process that's being completed, identify the inputs and outputs, and then identify and describe the controls, as well as identify any control deficiencies that appear on the flowchart. We didn't talk through that one in class, but I'll send it on the solution to the problem. Does that, any questions about what you're being asked to do for the exam? All right. It'll be on your computer, so please bring your computers with you to class. And like I said, I'll put the basket outside my door. And like I said, I won't be grading them until 10:07 tomorrow morning when I get here. So if you need a little more time to check things over, it'll be there. If you want to leave them with me now, that works too.